They say an alpha king bows to no one, but I watched the most feared ruler on this continent drop to his knees in front of a girl who couldn't even speak his name. 9 years she lived in his palace. 9 years she scrubbed his floors while her royal blood screamed beneath common rags. And the night his wolf finally recognized her as his mate, she had exactly one choice: love him and watch her brothers die, or sacrifice everything and lose him forever. This is the story of how silence became the deadliest weapon in the empire. Stick around until the end, because this gets darker than you think. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments so I know where my pack is watching from.
Passway.
The girl arrived at the palace gates on a winter morning when the sky looked like old steel and tasted like ash. She came alone. No family, no voice, just a bundle of half-finished fabric clutched against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her heart inside her ribs. The guards almost turned her away. She was small, forgettable, the kind of face that slipped through memory the moment you looked past it. Brown hair tangled from weeks on the road. Clothes that had been decent once, maybe, before mud and distance destroyed them. Her eyes were the only thing that didn't match the rest of her. Too bright. Too aware. Like she was cataloging every weakness in the iron gate, every shift in the guard's posture, every breath of wind that carried the scent of the forest beyond the palace walls. One guard, younger than the others, made the mistake of reaching for her. She stepped back before his fingers touched her shoulder. Smooth, efficient. The movement of someone who'd learned to read violence before it arrived. The older guard noticed. He'd been standing watch at these gates for 15 years. He knew the difference between a beggar and something else. "What's your business here?" he said. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Not a whisper. Not a rasp. Just silence so complete it made the morning feel colder. The younger guard laughed. "She's mute." The girl reached into her bundle and pulled out a scrap of parchment. The ink was smudged but readable. The words were simple. Requesting work. Any position. Will not speak. Will not leave. The older guard studied her face. "You run from something?" She nodded. He grunted. "Everyone here is running from something, but we don't take charity cases. You work or you starve. No exceptions." She nodded again. The younger guard was still grinning. What can a mute girl even do? She can't take orders if she can't hear them called. "She can hear just fine," the older guard said. "Can't you?" The girl nodded. He looked at her hands. They were raw, calloused. The hands of someone who'd spent years working with needle and thread, and something harder than that. There was a burn scar across her right palm, old and silver. "Kitchen needs someone to haul water and scrub pots," he said. "Pay is garbage. You sleep in the servants' wing. You steal anything. You lose a hand. You cause trouble. You lose your life. Understood?" She nodded. The gates opened. She walked through them without looking back, and the older guard watched her go with the uncomfortable feeling that he'd just let something dangerous into the palace. Something that didn't belong in the body of a silent slip of a girl. He was right. Her name was Celine Vale, though no one in the palace would learn that for years. She was 19 years old. She had 6 brothers, all of them cursed into wolves by a witch whose name tasted like poison on the tongue. And she had exactly 317 days left to break that curse before it became permanent. The palace didn't care about any of that. The palace cared that she showed up before dawn every morning, that she hauled water without complaint, that she scrubbed pots until her knuckles split and bled and kept scrubbing anyway, that she never asked for anything, never expected anything, just worked until her body gave out and then worked some more. The other servants ignored her at first. Then they started using her. She couldn't argue, couldn't protest, couldn't say no when someone shoved an extra basket of laundry into her arms or demanded she cover a shift that wasn't hers. She took it all. Silent, steady. At night, when the palace finally slept, she pulled out the bundle she'd brought with her. 6 shirts, each one woven from silverbane nettles that grew only in the cursed forest, where her brothers now ran on 4 legs instead of 2. Each one half-finished, each one representing a year of work that had shredded her hands and stolen her voice and cost her everything she used to be. The curse was specific, brutal. She had 9 years to weave 6 shirts from silverbane nettles without speaking a single word. If she spoke, the curse became permanent. If she failed to finish all 6 shirts before the 9 years ended, The curse became permanent. If anyone discovered what she was doing and destroyed even one shirt, the curse became permanent. She'd already used up 2 years before she arrived at the palace. 7 years left. 7 years of silence, 7 years of needle and thread and fingers that never quite stopped bleeding. The palace didn't notice. The palace didn't care. Except for him. King Valor Draven didn't visit the kitchens. Kings didn't visit kitchens. Kings had people to visit kitchens for them. But Valor wasn't like other kings. He was 28 years old and had been ruling this empire since he was 19 when his father died in a border skirmish that everyone knew wasn't a skirmish at all. It was an assassination, clean, professional, the kind of death that sent a message to every noble house in the empire. Weakness gets you killed. Valor learned that lesson well. He was 6 feet 4 inches of scar tissue and controlled violence. Black hair cropped short because long hair gave enemies something to grab. Gray eyes that looked like winter. A jaw that seemed carved from the same stone as the palace walls. He moved like a wolf, all coiled muscle and predatory grace because he was a wolf. An alpha. The strongest shifter in 3 generations, with a beast inside him that could tear through a war band before they finished screaming. He trusted no one, loved no one, expected betrayal from everyone because that's what the empire had taught him. And he was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixed, the kind that lived in his bones and whispered that maybe his father had the right idea. Maybe a quick death was better than a long life spent watching your back and waiting for the knife. He came to the kitchens because he couldn't sleep, because the palace felt too quiet and too loud at the same time, because he needed to move, to prowl, to remind his wolf that they were still alive even if living felt like drowning most days. The kitchen staff froze when he walked in. He ignored them, grabbed a piece of bread from the counter, stood there eating it while the head cook nearly had a stroke from panic. That's when he noticed her. Small girl in the corner, hands in a wash basin, scrubbing a pot that probably weighed more than she did. She didn't freeze, didn't panic, just kept working like a king hadn't just walked into her workspace and disrupted the entire hierarchy of the palace. Valor's wolf stirred, not with interest, with curiosity. The beast inside him had instincts sharper than any blade, and right now those instincts were focused on the girl who wasn't reacting to his presence. He walked over, stood close enough that his shadow fell across the basin. She kept scrubbing. The head cook made a strangled noise. "Your Majesty, that's just—" "I didn't ask," Valor said. The cook shut up. Valor looked down at the girl. She was younger than he'd thought, thin, the kind of thin that came from not eating enough, not from natural build. Her hands were destroyed, cuts and burns and calluses layered over each other like a map of pain. She still didn't look up. His wolf growled, low, interested now. "You deaf?" Valor said. She shook her head, kept scrubbing. "Then look at me when I'm talking to you." She stopped, set down the pot, dried her hands on her apron. Then she turned and looked straight at him. Valor's wolf went silent. Her eyes were green, not the common green you saw in farmers' daughters or merchants' wives. Deep green, forest green, the kind of green that lived in the wild places where civilization hadn't reached yet. They were steady, unafraid. Like she was looking at a man instead of a king, and she'd already decided he wasn't worth fearing. It had been years since anyone looked at him like that. "What's your name?" he said. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The head cook rushed over. "She's mute, Your Majesty. Came here a few months ago. Works hard. Doesn't cause trouble." Valor didn't take his eyes off her. "Can you write?" The girl hesitated, then nodded. He pulled a piece of charcoal from his pocket. He carried it for marking maps, held it out to her. "Write your name." She took the charcoal, found a clean section of counter, wrote in careful letters, "Celine." "Celine," he repeated. His wolf rolled the name around like it meant something. "Where are you from, Celine?" She wrote, "North." That told him nothing. The North was huge, forests and mountains and a dozen minor kingdoms that paid tribute to the empire when they remembered and ignored it when they didn't. "Why are you here?" She hesitated longer this time, then wrote, "Needed work." "Everyone needs work," he said. "Why my palace?" She erased the words with her palm, wrote new ones. "Safest place in the empire." His wolf liked that answer. Smart girl, practical. She understood that power meant protection, and the most powerful man in the empire lived behind these walls. But there was something else, something in the way she held herself, the way her eyes tracked his movements, the way her shoulders stayed loose even though she was standing close enough for him to kill her with one hand. She wasn't a servant? Not really. She was pretending to be one. His instincts never lied. "You're running from something," he said. She didn't write anything, just looked at him with those green eyes and nodded once. "Something dangerous?" Another nod. His wolf wanted to dig deeper, wanted to know what could scare a girl into silence and send her running to the one place in the empire where she'd be surrounded by the exact kind of danger she was supposedly fleeing. But Veilor had learned a long time ago that everyone had secrets. Push too hard, and people broke. Break them, and they became useless. "Keep working," he said. "Stay out of trouble." She nodded. He left. Behind him, the kitchen erupted into whispers. The girl went back to her pot like nothing had happened. But Veilor's wolf kept thinking about those green eyes all the way back to his chambers. 3 months passed. Celine worked. The palace slowly forgot she existed. Servants stopped noticing her. Guards stopped tracking her movements. She became part of the background. Invisible. Exactly what she needed. At night she wove. Her fingers moved in the dark, pulling silverbane thread through fabric that felt like it was made from frozen fire. Each stitch burned. Each row took pieces of her she'd never get back. She was on the 4th shirt now. 3 finished. 3 brothers freed. 3 more to go. But the work was getting harder. The nettles grew more potent the longer they were harvested. The pain was worse. Her hands didn't heal between sessions anymore. They just accumulated damage like a body accumulates scars. She didn't care. Pain was temporary. Her brother's curse was forever. During the day, she started noticing patterns in the palace. Guard rotations, servant schedules, the way power flowed through stone corridors and wooden doors. She mapped it all in her head because information was survival, and survival meant finishing the shirts before time ran out. She also noticed the king. He came to the kitchens more often now. Never at the same time, never for the same reason. Sometimes he grabbed food. Sometimes he just stood there, silent and brooding, like he was trying to remember what it felt like to be something other than a weapon. He always found her, always stood too close, always watched her work with those winter-gray eyes. She never acknowledged him, just kept her head down and her hands busy. But she was aware of him, constantly. Her body tracked his movements the same way prey tracked predators. Every time he walked into the room, her heart rate spiked. Every time he stood near her, her wolf senses screamed warnings she couldn't afford to listen to. Because Celine had a secret even bigger than her brother's curse. She was a shifter too. Royal blood. Astravane lineage. Her wolf was strong enough to feel the pull of an alpha when he got too close. And Veilor Draven wasn't just any alpha. He was the alpha. The strongest wolf in the empire. The kind of predator that made other predators nervous. And her wolf wanted him. Not romantically, not sexually. It was deeper than that. Primal. The recognition of a mate bond that hadn't formed yet but was waiting, building, growing stronger every time they were in the same room. She couldn't let it happen. Mate bonds were powerful, all-consuming. If it formed, she'd lose focus, lose time, lose the control she needed to finish the shirts and break the curse. Her brothers would die in wolf form. The witch who cursed them would win. So she avoided him, worked different shifts, changed her routine, did everything she could to stay invisible. It worked for a while. Then the king decided to stop pretending he wasn't hunting her. She was carrying water when he cornered her. Literal corner, stone walls on 3 sides, the king blocking the 4th. No escape. She froze. Bucket in hand, water sloshing against her skirt. Veilor looked at her like she was a puzzle he'd been trying to solve for months and had just found the missing piece. "You're avoiding me," he said. She shook her head. "Don't lie. I can smell deception. Your heartbeat just spiked." She set down the bucket, held up her hands in a gesture that meant she didn't know what he was talking about. His wolf rumbled, low, interested. "Why do you do that?" She raised an eyebrow. "Do what?" "Pretend to be weak. You move like a fighter, react like a predator, but you scrub floors and haul water and never look anyone in the eye." She reached for the bucket. He stepped on the handle. Not done talking. She looked up at him, full eye contact, The kind that would get most servants killed. His wolf went quiet again. That same reaction as the first time. Like her eyes held something his beast recognized but couldn't name. "You're not just running from something," he said. "You're hiding." "What are you hiding, Celine?" She didn't move, didn't breathe, just held his gaze like they were two wolves sizing each other up before a fight. The moment stretched, broke. Valor stepped back, lifted his foot off the bucket handle. "Fine, keep your secrets. But understand something. I rule this empire because I see things other people miss. I see you. Whatever you're hiding, I'll figure it out eventually." She picked up the bucket, walked past him, disappeared down the corridor. Valor watched her go, and for the first time in years, he felt something other than exhaustion. He felt alive. His wolf wanted to chase her, hunt her, pin her down and demand answers until she either broke or killed him trying. But Valor wasn't a young alpha anymore. He'd learned patience, control, how to wait for prey to make a mistake instead of forcing one. So he waited. And while he waited, something else arrived at the palace. Someone else. The Empress Seraphine Noctis came with an entourage of 50. Carriages, guards, servants, gifts wrapped in silk and tied with gold. She announced her arrival 3 days in advance so the palace could prepare properly. Valor hated her on sight, not because she was beautiful. She was. Tall, elegant, black hair that fell to her waist, eyes so dark they looked like holes punched in reality, skin pale enough to make moonlight look dirty. He hated her because his wolf hated her. The beast inside him took one look at Seraphine Noctis and growled a warning that vibrated in his bones. Witch. Not metaphorically. Actually, she was a blood witch. Ancient magic, the kind that required sacrifice and pain and prices most people wouldn't pay. She ruled the Northern Empire through fear and power that made even Valor's shifter strength look insignificant. And she was here to offer marriage. Political alliance, she said. Her voice was silk over razors. Your strength combined with my magic. Together we could rule the entire continent. They were in the throne room. Every noble in the palace watching, judging, calculating how this alliance would shift power. Valor sat on his throne and looked at her like she was an insect that had wandered into his hall by mistake. "I don't share power," he said. Seraphine smiled. "Neither do I. That's why this works. You rule the south, I rule the north. We meet in the middle and carve out everything between. And what do I get out of this?" Her smile widened. "Me, my magic, my armies, and the one thing you want most in this world." "What's that?" "An heir." The throne room went silent. Valor's wolf snarled. His human side kept his face blank. "I don't need an heir," he said. "Every king needs an heir, especially one who's made as many enemies as you have. What happens when you die, King Valor? Who inherits your empire? Your generals? They'll tear it apart fighting over scraps." He stood, walked down the steps, stopped close enough to smell the magic on her skin. It smelled like old blood and older promises. "If you think I'm weak enough to need you," he said quietly, "then you don't know me at all." Seraphine didn't flinch. "I know you better than you think. I know you're tired. I know you're alone. I know you lie awake at night wondering if this is all there is. Power and violence and waiting for someone to finally put a knife in your back." His wolf wanted to kill her. Right there, in front of everyone, rip out her throat and prove that he wasn't weak or tired or desperate. But Valor had learned control. He smiled. Cold. Dangerous. "You can stay 1 week," he said, "as a guest. After that, take your offer and leave my empire." He turned his back on her, walked away. Behind him, Seraphine's smile never wavered. She'd gotten exactly what she wanted. Celine was in the kitchens when she heard about the witch. The servants were whispering, excited, terrified, a northern empress. Blood magic. Marriage proposals. The kind of gossip that made everyone forget their work and huddle in corners trading rumors. Celine kept scrubbing pots, but her hands were shaking because she knew that name. Seraphine Noctis, the witch who'd cursed her brothers, the woman who'd destroyed Celine's entire family 9 years ago when Celine was just a child watching her world burn. She was here, in the palace, close enough to touch, Celine's wolf screamed warnings. Her human side forced them down, forced herself to breathe, forced herself to keep working like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. If Seraphine recognized her, the curse became permanent. If the witch discovered the shirts, they'd be destroyed. If Celine lost control for even a second, 9 years of sacrifice meant nothing. She needed to leave. Now. Tonight. Take the shirts and run before... Your Majesty. The kitchen went silent. Celine turned. Valor stood in the doorway. But he wasn't looking at the servants. He was looking at Seraphine, who'd followed him into the kitchen like a shadow made of silk and poison. "I wanted to see your palace," Seraphine said. "Every corner, every secret." Her eyes scanned the room, stopped on Celine. The moment stretched forever. Seraphine's smile grew. "And you are?" she said. Celine's heart stopped. "She's mute," Valor said before anyone else could answer. "Kitchen servant. Nothing important." Seraphine walked closer. Her magic filled the room like smoke, suffocating, heavy. She stood in front of Celine, studied her face. "Strange," Seraphine said. "You look familiar." Celine didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared at the witch who'd murdered her father and cursed her brothers and stolen everything Celine used to be. "Do I know you?" Seraphine asked. Celine shook her head. Seraphine reached out, touched Celine's face. Her fingers were cold. "Wrong." "No," Seraphine said slowly. "I suppose not. But you have interesting eyes, forest eyes. I knew someone once with eyes like that." She dropped her hand, turned back to Valor. "You keep interesting servants, King Valor. They work hard," Valor said. "That's all that matters." Seraphine laughed, a sound like breaking glass. They left. Celine stood frozen in the kitchen with her heart trying to break through her ribs and her wolf screaming warnings that came 9 years too late. The witch was here, and Celine was out of time. Celine didn't sleep that night. She sat in her corner of the servants' quarters with the unfinished shirt spread across her lap like evidence of a crime she hadn't committed yet. Her hands moved automatically. Needle through fabric, thread pulling tight, each stitch a prayer to gods she didn't believe in anymore. The witch was here, in the palace, breathing the same air, walking the same halls. 9 years of running, 9 years of silence, 9 years of bleeding fingers and stolen moments and sacrifice that carved pieces out of her soul she'd never get back. And Seraphine Noctis had looked her in the face and almost remembered. Almost. Celine's wolf paced inside her skin, restless, angry. The beast wanted to shift, wanted to run, wanted to fight the witch who'd destroyed everything and scattered Celine's family across the cursed forest like they were nothing. But fighting meant speaking. Speaking meant breaking the curse. Breaking the curse meant her brothers died as wolves forever. So Celine kept weaving, kept bleeding, kept breathing through the panic that threatened to close her throat. The 4th shirt was nearly done. 2 more after that. 4 years left on the 9-year deadline. She could finish. She would finish. She just needed to stay invisible long enough for the witch to leave. Sect. Valor couldn't sleep either. He stood on his balcony overlooking the palace grounds, bare-chested in the cold air because his wolf ran too hot for clothing most nights. The moon was 3 days from full. His beast stirred restlessly, testing the edges of his control. Below, the palace slept. Guards walked their routes. Servants finished late shifts. Everything moved like clockwork because Valor demanded precision and killed anything that disrupted it. But something was disrupted now. The witch bothered him, not because she was powerful. He'd dealt with powerful enemies before. She bothered him because his wolf hated her with an intensity that didn't make sense. Seraphine hadn't threatened him, hadn't challenged his authority. She'd offered alliance, marriage, the kind of political move that smart rulers made all the time. His wolf didn't care about smart. His wolf wanted her throat. And then there was the girl, Celine, the silent servant who moved like a warrior and looked at him like he was just a man instead of a king, who avoided him now with an intensity that meant she felt the pull too. The mate bond building between them, whether either of them wanted it or not. He'd tried ignoring it, tried focusing on the empire and the endless stream of problems that required his attention. Border disputes, trade negotiations, assassination attempts that happened often enough to be routine. Nothing worked. His wolf kept circling back to her. And tonight, when Seraphine had touched Celine's face, Vaelor's beast had nearly torn free. The urge to rip the witch's arm off had been so strong he'd tasted blood. That reaction told him something important. Whatever Celine was hiding, it was connected to Seraphine, connected to the north, connected to whatever had sent a royal-blooded shifter running south to scrub pots in his kitchen. He needed answers. His wolf agreed. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he'd corner her properly. No escape routes, no interruptions, just the two of them and the truth between them. Behind him, something moved in the shadows. Vaelor spun, hand going to the knife he always kept close. Seraphine stepped into the moonlight like she'd been made from it. "You're restless tonight," she said. Vaelor didn't lower the knife. "How did you get past my guards?" "I'm a witch, King Vaelor. Doors open when I want them to." His wolf snarled. "Get out." She smiled, that same razor blade expression that made him want to test how fast she could bleed. "I came to talk," she said. "Privately, without your court watching every word. We have nothing to discuss, don't we?" She moved closer. Fluid. Graceful. Like a predator that knew it outmatched everything else in the room. "You're lying to yourself. I can see it. You want what I'm offering. I want you gone. No. You want peace. You want to stop watching your back every second. You want to sleep through the night without wondering which noble is planning your death. I can give you that. By marrying you. By combining our power." She was close enough to touch now. Close enough for him to smell the magic on her skin. Together, we're unstoppable. Apart, we're just two rulers fighting to hold territory that wants us dead. Vaelor's grip tightened on the knife. "Why me? You could marry anyone. Northern kings, Eastern emperors. Why cross the continent to offer this?" "Because you're the only one strong enough," she said simply. "The only alpha who hasn't bent to politics or softened with age. You're a weapon, Vaelor. I need a weapon." "For what?" She smiled wider. "To conquer everything that remains." His wolf wanted to kill her. His human side wanted answers first. "What happens if I say no? Then I leave in 6 days. And you spend the rest of your short life wondering if you made the right choice. Is that a threat?" "It's reality. You have enemies, King Vaelor, more than you know. Some of them are in this palace right now, wearing servant clothes, pretending loyalty while they wait for the perfect moment to strike." Something in her tone made his instinct scream. "Who?" Seraphine's eyes glittered. "Find out yourself. You're supposed to be the great hunter." "Hunt." She turned and walked back into the shadows. Disappeared like she'd never been there. Vaelor stood alone on the balcony with his knife in hand and his wolf howling warnings that came too late. The witch knew something. About Celine. About whatever secret the girl was hiding. And Vaelor was going to find out what it was before Seraphine could use it against him. Morning came cold and gray. Celine was hauling water when the order came down. The king wanted to see her, immediately, in his private study. Every servant in the kitchen went silent. Private study meant 2 things. You were getting rewarded or you were getting killed. And servants didn't get rewarded. Celine set down the buckets, dried her hands, followed the guard through stone corridors that felt like they were closing in. Her wolf screamed at her to run. Her human side knew running would just confirm whatever suspicions the king already had. So she walked, one foot in front of the other, heart hammering hard enough to crack ribs. The guard stopped outside a heavy oak door, knocked twice. "Enter," Vaelor's voice said. The guard opened the door, gestured for Celine to go in. She did. The door closed behind her with a sound like a coffin lid. Vaelor's study was smaller than she'd expected. Books lining the walls, maps spread across a heavy desk, weapons mounted above the fireplace. Everything arranged with military precision. The king stood by the window, arms crossed, winter-gray eyes tracking her every movement. "Sit," he said. There was only one chair, directly across from the desk. No escape routes, no weapons within reach. She sat. Vaelor moved to the desk, leaned against it, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "I'm going to ask you questions," he said. "You're going to answer them. Honestly. Understood?" She nodded. He pulled out parchment and charcoal, set them in front of her. "What's your real name?" She wrote, "Celine Vale." Vale, he repeated. Northern house, minor nobility. Fell apart 9 years ago when the lord died under suspicious circumstances. She didn't move. Were you there when it happened? She hesitated, then nodded. His wolf leaned forward. Interested. Did you see who killed him? Another hesitation, longer this time. Then she wrote, Witch. The temperature in the room dropped. Valor's voice went quiet. Dangerous. What witch? She wrote 2 words. Seraphine Noctis. Silence. The kind of silence that preceded violence. Valor pushed off the desk, crossed the room, stood at the window with his back to her. When he spoke again, his voice was different, harder. The voice of a king who just realized he'd been played. She killed your father. Celine nodded. Why? She wrote, He refused to bend. She wanted his territory. She took it, and you ran. Another nod. Where are your brothers? Your family? Her hand stopped. The charcoal hovered above the parchment. This was it. The moment where she either lied or told the truth that would destroy everything. She chose truth. Wrote, Cursed. Valor turned. How? Witch magic. 9 years ago, same night she killed my father. What kind of curse? Her hand shook. She wrote, Wolves, permanent unless broken. His eyes narrowed. How do you break it? She didn't write anything. Celine, he said. How do you break it? She looked at him, really looked at him, saw the predator behind the king, the wolf behind the man, the alpha who'd spent his entire life trusting no one and expecting betrayal from everyone. If she told him, he'd understand why she couldn't speak, why she worked herself to death every night, why she'd risked everything to come here. He might even help. Or he might see her as a liability, another enemy hiding in his palace, another threat to eliminate. Her wolf said trust him. Her human side said survive. She wrote, Can't say. Part of the curse? That's convenient. It's true. Prove it. She erased the words. Wrote new ones. 6 brothers. 6 shirts. 9 years of silence. Break one rule, they die as wolves forever. Valor stared at the words. His wolf was completely silent now. Processing, calculating. You've been here 7 months, he said slowly. Working in my kitchen, sleeping in my servants' quarters, all while weaving magic that could break a witch's curse. She nodded. And now that witch is in my palace, offering marriage, offering alliance. Another nod. His jaw tightened. Does she know you're here? She almost recognized me yesterday, but not quite. Almost isn't good enough. If she figures out who you are, what happens? Celine wrote 3 words. She kills me. And your brothers? Die as wolves. And if I let her kill you? If I hand you over to buy her alliance? Celine's heart stopped. Her wolf went dead silent. Because that was the question, wasn't it? That was the calculation every ruler made. Sacrifice one to save many. She wrote, You won't. You sound confident. She looked him straight in the eye, wrote, Your wolf won't let you. The silence that followed was different, heavier, loaded with something neither of them wanted to name. Valor moved, slowly, deliberately, came around the desk until he was close enough for her to smell pine in winter and something wild that made her wolf keen. You feel it too, he said. Not a question. She didn't move. The mate bond. It's there, building, waiting. Her breath caught. His hand came up, stopped just short of touching her face, close enough for her to feel the heat of his palm. I could force it, he said quietly. Force the bond. Make you mine. Then Seraphine couldn't touch you without declaring war on me directly. She pulled back, shook her head hard. No? His voice went dangerous. Why not? Because she couldn't afford distractions. Couldn't afford the all-consuming obsession that came with mate bonds. Couldn't afford to lose focus for even a second when she had 2 shirts left and 4 years to finish them. She wrote, Need to finish the shirts first. And if you don't have 4 years? If Seraphine figures out who you are tomorrow? She erased the words. Wrote, Then I die. But my brothers die too, and she wins. That's not acceptable. It's reality. Valor's wolf snarled. His human side fought for control. Fine, he said. You want to finish your shirts? I'll give you time. But you work for me now, officially. Personal attendant. You stay in my wing, under my protection. She blinked, wrote, Why? Because Seraphine is hunting you. She might not remember your face yet, but she will. And when she does, I want you where I can defend you. You don't know me. I know enough. You're royal blood hiding as a servant. You're breaking a witch's curse with needle and thread. You're brave enough or desperate enough to walk into a king's palace and gamble everything on silence. His eyes locked on hers. I protect what's mine. I'm not yours. Yet, he said. But you will be. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Celine's wolf wanted to submit, wanted to roll over and accept the protection of the strongest alpha in the empire. Her human side knew better. Protection came with prices, and Valor Draven didn't give anything without expecting payment. She stood, wrote one more message. I'll work for you, but the bond stays dormant until I finish. He smiled, cold, amused. You think you can negotiate with me? She held his gaze. Didn't back down. The smile widened. Fine. No bond until you're ready, but you follow my orders. You sleep where I tell you. You don't hide anything else from me. She nodded. And Celine? His voice dropped. Deadly quiet. If Seraphine comes for you, you let me handle it. No heroics, no sacrifices. You survive. Understood? She nodded again. Good. Now get out. I'll have your things moved to the north wing by tonight. She left, walked through the corridors with her heart still hammering and her wolf still keening, and the absolute certainty that she'd just made a deal with a predator who collected debts in blood. Oshak. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Celine moved into the north wing, a small room connected to the king's chambers by a single door that locked from both sides. It was 10 times larger than her corner in the servants' quarters, 10 times more dangerous. She attended the king during the day, brought him food, organized his schedules, stood in corners during meetings and watched nobles scheme while pretending loyalty. At night she wove. The 4th shirt was nearly done, just the sleeves left. Maybe 2 more weeks of work. Valor watched her constantly. Not with suspicion, with something else. Hunger, maybe. Or recognition, like his wolf had accepted what his human side was still fighting. The mate bond pulled stronger every day. Every time they were in the same room, her body reacted. Heart rate spiking, breath catching, skin hyper-aware of every movement he made. She ignored it, focused on the work, on survival, and tried not to notice when Seraphine started watching her too. The witch was everywhere suddenly. In the throne room during court sessions, in the gardens during evening walks, in the dining hall during meals, always close, always smiling, always asking questions that sounded innocent but cut like knives. Tell me, Seraphine said one evening. She'd cornered Celine in a corridor outside the king's study. How long have you worked here? Celine held up 7 fingers. 7 months. And before that? Celine gestured vaguely north. The north? How interesting. I rule the north. Perhaps we crossed paths before. Celine shook her head. Seraphine's smile didn't waver. Perhaps. But you know, I never forget a face. And yours keeps nagging at me, like a memory I can't quite reach. She leaned closer. Her magic pressed against Celine's skin like oil, suffocating. Do you know what I do to people who lie to me? Seraphine whispered. Celine didn't move. I peel their skin off piece by piece until they beg to tell the truth. Then I kill them anyway because liars don't deserve mercy. She pulled back, smiled brightly. But you're not a liar, are you? You're just a mute servant girl who happened to come from the north at exactly the same time a certain noble house fell apart. Pure coincidence. Celine's wolf screamed warnings. Her human side kept her face blank. Run along, Seraphine said. I'm sure the king needs you. Celine left, walked calmly until she rounded the corner. Then she ran, found Valor in his study, slammed the door behind her. He looked up from his maps. What happened? She grabbed parchment, wrote, She knows, or she's close to knowing. Seraphine? A nod. Valor's expression went cold. What did she say? Celine wrote out the conversation. Every word, every threat. When she finished, Valor was on his feet, his wolf pressing against his skin, eyes shifting from gray to gold and back again. She touched you? Just leaned close. His hands flexed, claws extending slightly before he forced them back. The reaction should have scared Celine. Instead, it made her wolf purr. Possessive alpha, protective mate. She shoved those thoughts down. Valor paced, thinking, calculating. She's testing me, he said, seeing how I react when she threatens what's mine. I'm not, he cut her off with a look. You are. Whether you accept it or not, my wolf has already claimed you, and Seraphine knows it. Then I should leave. Tonight, before this gets worse. No. Valor? No, he said again. Harder. You leave. She hunts you. She's been waiting 9 years for you to surface. You think she'll let you disappear again? Celine stared at the parchment, wrote, What do I do? You stay, he said, under my protection, and we prepare for war. War? He smiled. No teeth, just predator. Seraphine came here for 3 things. Alliance, power, and you. She's not getting any of them. You don't know she came for me specifically. I know witches, I know predators. She didn't cross the continent for politics. She came because she felt you here. Blood calls to blood, magic calls to magic. Your unfinished business. Then we're both dead. Maybe. Or maybe I'm stronger than she thinks. His confidence should have been reassuring. Instead, it made Celine's stomach drop, because she'd watched this before, watched her father stand against Seraphine Noctis with the same confidence, the same strength, the same absolute certainty that he couldn't lose. The witch had killed him in less than an hour. Valor saw the fear in her face, crossed the room, stood close enough for her to feel his heat. I'm not your father, he said quietly. I don't die easy. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that his wolf was strong enough and his instincts were sharp enough and his power was vast enough to win against a witch who'd spent centuries perfecting death. But wanting didn't make it true. She wrote, What if you're wrong? Then you run, he said, fast and far, and you finish those shirts somewhere safe. And you? He touched her face, gentle. The first time he'd actually made contact. I'll buy you time, he said. That was the moment. That was when Celine realized she'd already lost. Not to the curse, not to the witch, to this, to him, to the bond that hadn't formed yet, but was inevitable as sunrise. She couldn't afford to care, couldn't afford to love, couldn't afford to let anything matter more than finishing the shirts and saving her brothers. But she did. She cared. And the way Valor was looking at her said he knew it. Come on, he said. You need to eat. She shook her head, pointed to the room where her shirts waited. He sighed. You're going to work yourself to death. She wrote, 2 more shirts, 4 years. Then I'm done. 4 years is a long time, Celine. Not long enough. He let it go. Let her disappear into her room with her needle and thread and the desperate hope that maybe this time the story ended differently. The 5th day came. Seraphine called for a formal court session. Every noble in the palace attended. Valor sat on his throne looking like violence carved from stone. Celine stood in the corner, invisible, watching. The witch stood at the center of the throne room wearing black silk and a smile that made even the bravest lords nervous. King Valor, she said, her voice carried without effort. I came here with an offer. You've had nearly a week to consider it. What is your answer? Every eye turned to the king. Valor leaned forward, elbows on his knees, expression unreadable. No, he said simply. The room went silent. Seraphine's smile never wavered. May I ask why? You may not, Valor said. My answer is no. Your week is up tomorrow. Make arrangements to leave. Seraphine tilted her head. How disappointing. I thought you were smarter than this. Smart enough to know when someone's playing games. Games? She laughed. That lovely sound like breaking glass. King Valor, I don't play games. I play for keeps. Then you're going to lose. Her eyes flashed, literally, black to red and back again. We'll see, she said. Perhaps you'll reconsider when you understand what you're protecting. She turned, looked directly at Celine. The air left the room. That girl, Seraphine said. Your personal attendant. Do you know who she really is? Valor didn't move. A servant. Is she? Seraphine walked slowly towards Celine, every step deliberate, because I finally remembered where I've seen those eyes before. She stopped 3 feet away. Celine's heart hammered so hard she thought it might rupture. Lady Celine Vale, Seraphine said, daughter of Lord Marcus Vale, last surviving child of a house I destroyed 9 years ago when they refused to submit. The nobles erupted into whispers. Vylor's voice cut through them like a blade. Quiet. Silence crashed down. Seraphine smiled at Celine. Did you really think you could hide from me? Did you think I wouldn't feel you breathing the same air after all these years? Celine couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only watch as 9 years of sacrifice crumbled in front of her. And the best part, Seraphine said, she has something I want, something she's been making in secret. 6 magical shirts woven from silverbane nettles. Valor's expression went deadly. Shirts designed to break the curse I placed on her brothers, Seraphine continued. A curse that keeps them as wolves. Mindless, feral, trapped. She's been weaving them for 9 years, silent as a grave, bleeding her fingers raw, all to undo my work. The witch turned back to Valor. So you see, King Valor, you're not protecting a servant. You're protecting my enemy, an enemy who's been hiding in your palace, using your protection, making weapons designed to destroy my magic. She spread her hands. Give her to me, she said. Let me finish what I started, and I'll leave peacefully. No war, no bloodshed, just justice. The throne room held its breath. Valor stood, slowly, deliberately, walked down the steps, crossed the floor, stopped between Seraphine and Celine. No, he said. Seraphine's smile finally cracked. You're choosing her? A lying servant over an alliance that could give you everything? I'm choosing to tell you to get the hell out of my empire, Valor said. Before I forget you're a guest. The temperature dropped. Magic filled the air, thick, choking. Seraphine's power pressing against everyone in the room like a physical weight. You'll regret this, she whispered. Probably, Valor said, but I'll regret it alive. Seraphine's eyes went completely black. Very well, King Valor. You want war? You'll have it. She vanished, literally, dissolved into shadow and smoke. The throne room erupted into chaos. Valor turned, grabbed Celine's arm, pulled her toward a side exit. Move, he said. Now. They ran. Behind them, the palace began to scream. The palace was burning, not with fire, with magic. Black smoke that moved like it had lungs and intention. It poured through corridors and under doors and wrapped around throats like living rope. Guards collapsed. Servants ran screaming. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with malevolent energy that tasted like copper and rot. Valor pulled Celine through the chaos with one hand locked around her wrist. His wolf was surface close now, eyes flickering gold, claws extending and retracting as he fought for control. They burst through a side door into the gardens. Cold air hit them like a slap. Behind them, the palace groaned, stone cracking, windows shattering, the sound of an empire starting to collapse. Keep moving, Valor said. Celine's lungs burned, her legs were already shaking from exertion. But she ran because stopping meant dying, and she hadn't bled for 9 years just to die in a witch's tantrum. They made it to the stables. Valor kicked open the door, grabbed the nearest horse. No saddle, no bridle, just raw animal panic that matched the energy crackling through the air. He vaulted onto the horse's back, reached down, pulled Celine up behind him. Hold on, he said. She wrapped her arms around his waist, felt the heat of his body, the rigid tension of muscles ready to snap. The horse bolted. They crashed through the garden gates and into the forest beyond. Trees closed around them like the bars of a cage. The horse ran blind, terrified by the magic saturating the air. Celine looked back once, saw the palace silhouetted against the sky, black smoke rising from every window, lightning that wasn't natural forking across the clouds. Seraphine wasn't just attacking, she was making a statement. Cross me and I'll burn your world down. The message was received. They rode for 2 hours before the horse finally gave out. It collapsed in a clearing, foam on its mouth, sides heaving. Valor dismounted, helped Celine down. The moment her feet hit ground, her legs buckled. He caught her, held her upright. "You hurt?" She shook her head, just exhausted. Body flooded with adrenaline that was starting to crash now that the immediate danger had passed. Valor scanned the forest, his wolf senses reading the environment for threats. After a moment, he relaxed slightly. "We're clear for now," he said. "But she'll track us. Blood magic can follow trails regular people can't see." Celine's hands were shaking. She tried to still them. Failed. Valor noticed. Pulled off his jacket. Wrapped it around her shoulders, even though he was the one standing there in just a torn shirt. The jacket was huge on her. It smelled like pine and smoke and wolf. Her animal side wanted to burrow into it. Her human side was too busy processing the fact that everything had just shattered. 9 years. 9 years of planning and sacrifice and careful invisibility. Gone in 10 minutes because a witch finally remembered a face. Celine's throat tried to close. She forced it open, forced herself to breathe. Valor watched her with those winter-gray eyes that saw too much. "You knew this could happen," he said quietly. She nodded. "But you hoped it wouldn't." Another nod. He crouched in front of her. Eye level now. "Hope is expensive. It makes you careless. Makes you believe you can outrun the things hunting you." She met his gaze, found unexpected understanding there, like he'd lived that lesson already. Multiple times. "What do we do now?" His voice was calm, strategic, the voice of a king who'd handled worse situations than this. Celine didn't have parchment, didn't have charcoal, couldn't write the answer, so she pointed north, toward the forest where her brothers ran, where the silverbane nettles grew, where the last 2 shirts could be finished if she had time. Valor understood immediately. "Your brothers." She nodded. "How far?" She held up 3 fingers. 3 days on foot through hostile territory, crawling with things that ate travelers. He stood, started gathering branches, building a rough shelter against the cold. "We rest until dawn," he said. "Then we move fast. 3 days puts us at the edge of the cursed forest. That's witch territory, Seraphine's territory." Celine knew. She'd been avoiding those woods for 9 years specifically because they belonged to the woman who wanted her dead. But the nettles only grew there. The magic required to break the curse came from the same source as the curse itself. Cruel symmetry. The witch had made sure that breaking her curse meant walking straight back into her domain. Valor finished the shelter, sat down with his back against a tree, gestured for Celine to join him. She did. Too tired to argue, too cold to care about propriety. They sat in silence while the forest settled around them. Nocturnal animals stirring, wind moving through branches, normal sounds that felt wrong after the supernatural chaos at the palace. "I lost my empire tonight," Valor said eventually. His voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing weather. "The nobles will scatter. My generals will fight over territory. Everything I built for 9 years will tear itself apart within a week." Celine's chest tightened, guilt flooding in. He continued before she could spiral. "I don't regret it." She looked at him, questioning. "Empires fall," he said. "Power shifts. Today I'm king. Tomorrow I'm a fugitive. That's the nature of ruling. You hold power until someone stronger takes it." His eyes met hers. "But mate bonds don't break. Ever. I chose the thing that lasts." She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was insane for throwing away an empire for a girl he barely knew, for a bond that hadn't even formed yet. But the words wouldn't come, because her wolf understood. Her wolf had made the same choice, the same insane, illogical, absolutely certain choice. She leaned against him, just slightly, just enough to feel solid warmth instead of cold air. He didn't comment, just adjusted so she fit more comfortably against his side. They stayed like that while the moon rose and the forest whispered, and somewhere behind them an empire crumbled without its king. Dawn came gray and cold. Valor was already awake, had been for hours probably, watching the forest, calculating routes and threats and the 1,000 variables that kept them alive. Celine stirred. Her body protested. Everything hurt. Muscles she didn't know she had were screaming. "Up," Valor said. "We need to move before she finds the trail." They left the dead horse, left the shelter, walked into the forest with nothing but the clothes on their backs. and the certainty that stopping meant death. The first day was brutal, dense undergrowth, steep terrain, the kind of wilderness that didn't care if you were a king or a servant or anything in between. It just tested you, broke you if you were weak. Celine wasn't weak. 9 years of manual labor had built strength most nobles never touched. But she wasn't a warrior, wasn't trained for this. Valor was patient, more patient than she'd expected. When she stumbled, he caught her. When she needed water, he found streams. When exhaustion tried to drop her, he kept her moving with quiet encouragement that didn't feel like orders. This is what alphas did. They protected, they led, they carried the weight so their pack didn't have to, even when the pack was just one silent girl who'd destroyed his life. By nightfall, they'd covered maybe 10 miles. Not enough. Not nearly enough. They made camp in a cave. No fire. Fire meant smoke. Smoke meant location. Celine collapsed against the stone wall. Every breath felt like knives. Her feet were bleeding through her shoes. Her hands were shaking again. Valor sat across from her, pulled out a knife, started sharpening it on a rock. The sound was rhythmic, almost soothing. "Tell me about your brothers," he said. She blinked, surprised. He kept sharpening. "I'm going to meet them eventually. Might as well know who they are." She didn't have writing materials, but she held up 6 fingers, 6 brothers. "I know that part." "What are their names?" She went still. Because no one had asked about her brothers in 9 years. No one cared about the boys who'd been turned into wolves. They were just casualties of a witch's temper. Forgotten. She started signing, fingers moving through the alphabet slowly. Spelling names. Valor watched, memorized. Kieran, eldest, would have inherited the house. She nodded. "Probably hates that you're doing this instead of him." She nodded again. Harder. Because Kieran did hate it. Every time she saw him in wolf form, his eyes carried that same furious helplessness. The rage of a man trapped in a beast's body watching his baby sister bleed for him. "Next," Valor said. She spelled Darian, Rowan, Caspian, Theron, Finn. "All of them younger than you?" She held up 5 fingers, then pointed to herself, then 1 finger. Kieran was oldest, Finn was youngest. She was second, the only girl. The one their father had called Little Shadow because she'd followed him everywhere, the one who'd watched him die. Valor's expression softened, just slightly. "Why you? Why did you take the curse instead of letting them suffer it?" "Because someone had to. Because she was the only one who'd understood what the witch's ultimatum meant. 9 years of silence and blood and isolation in exchange for 6 lives. The math was simple. 6 was more than 1. She pointed to her heart, then to the forest. Mimed sowing. Valor nodded slowly. "You loved them, so you sacrificed yourself." It wasn't sacrifice. It was survival. Her family was the only thing she had left after Seraphine destroyed everything else. If her brothers died as wolves, she'd be completely alone in a world that already wanted her dead. Better to bleed than to be empty. "How much longer?" Valor asked. "On the shirts." She held up 2 fingers, then made a circle. 2 moons, maybe. If she worked every night. If nothing interrupted. If she survived that long. "That's not long," he said. She knew. She'd been racing the deadline for 9 years, always aware of the clock ticking down, always calculating whether she'd make it or fail at the last second. "Rest," Valor said. "Tomorrow's worse than today." She closed her eyes, tried to sleep, couldn't. Her mind kept spinning, replaying the throne room, the witch's revelation, the moment everything shattered. She'd been so careful, so precise. 9 years without a single mistake. And it hadn't mattered. Seraphine had found her anyway. Across the cave, Valor's breathing evened out, deep, steady. The breathing of someone who could sleep anywhere because danger was constant and rest was tactical. Celine envied that, envied the ability to shut down fear and just exist in the moment. But she wasn't a king, wasn't a warrior, just a girl who'd bet everything on silence and was watching the bet fail in real time. She finally slept near dawn, restless, haunted by dreams of burning palaces and brothers who died with her name on their tongues. The second day was worse. They woke to rain, cold, miserable. the kind that soaked through clothes and turned the ground to mud. They walked anyway, because stopping meant Seraphine caught up. And if Seraphine caught up, everything ended. By midday, Celine's teeth were chattering, her body temperature was dropping, hypothermia creeping in. Valor noticed. Of course he noticed. Alphas tracked pack health like it was breathing. He stopped, found a hollow tree, pushed her inside. "Stay," he said. "I'll be back." He disappeared into the rain. Celine huddled in the hollow, shivering, trying to generate warmth that wouldn't come. Her wolf wanted to shift. 4 legs and fur were better equipped for this, but shifting meant noise, meant scent markers that any predator could follow. So she stayed human, stayed cold, stayed alive. Valor returned 20 minutes later with an armful of dry wood from somewhere. How he'd found dry anything in this weather was a mystery. He built a small fire, just enough heat to stop the shivering. "You're going to get pneumonia," he said. "Strip." She stared at him. "Your clothes are soaked. You need to dry them or you'll die tonight. Strip." She hesitated. Not from modesty. From the practical knowledge that getting naked in front of a potential mate was dangerous when the bond was already pulling. His expression went flat. "I've seen naked women before. You're not special. Now strip before I do it for you." The tone left no room for argument. She stripped, down to skin, handed him the soaked clothes. He hung them near the fire, pulled off his own shirt, handed it to her. "It's drier than yours." She put it on. It was huge, hung to her knees, still damp but better than nothing. Valor sat across from her, shirtless, unbothered by the cold that was killing her. His body was exactly what she'd expected. Scars everywhere, old wounds layered over each other. The body of someone who'd been fighting his entire life and kept winning through sheer refusal to die. Her wolf wanted to touch, wanted to trace every scar and learn the story behind it. Her human side kept her hands to herself. The silence stretched, broken only by rain and crackling fire. "Why did you choose me?" Celine asked with her eyes. Valor understood the question, looked at her for a long moment. "Because you're the first person in 9 years who didn't want something from me," he said quietly. "Everyone else wants power, territory, favor, protection. You just wanted to survive." His jaw tightened. "That's rare. Honest desperation. I respect it." That wasn't the whole answer. She could see it in his face. There was more he wasn't saying. "And because my wolf recognized you," he continued, "before my brain caught up, before I knew your name or your story, the beast knew. He always knows." She nodded. Her wolf had done the same thing, recognized him as mate before logic or self-preservation could interfere. It should have been romantic, fated mates finding each other against impossible odds. Instead, it felt like a curse. Another chain binding her to circumstances she couldn't control. Her clothes dried slowly. When they were ready, she changed, handed back his shirt. He put it on, kicked dirt over the fire. 2 more days, he said. "If we move fast, if nothing stops us." Celine stood, walked back into the rain, let the cold sharpen her focus because she needed to be sharp now, needed to be ready for whatever came next. They walked until nightfall. Made camp in another cave, ate what little food Valor had scavenged. "Tomorrow we hit the border," he said. "The cursed forest. That's when it gets dangerous." As if the past 2 days hadn't been dangerous enough. She must have looked skeptical because he smiled. Grim, no humor. "What we've been through so far was just travel," he said. "Tomorrow we enter active witch territory. She'll have defenses, spells, creatures bound to her service. And she'll know the moment we cross the threshold." "So we walk into a trap." "We walk into a trap," he agreed. "But it's the only way to finish what you started." Celine understood, had always understood. Breaking the curse meant confronting the thing that created it. There was no safe route, no clever way around it, just straight through the danger and hope she came out alive on the other side. She closed her eyes, tried to rest, failed again. Because tomorrow wasn't just dangerous. Tomorrow was the point where survival stopped being about avoiding death and started being about actively courting it. The 3rd day dawned clear. They reached the border by noon. Celine knew they'd arrived because the forest changed. The trees grew wrong, twisted. branches that curved like broken fingers, bark that looked diseased. The ground was covered in moss that actually pulsed, like the earth was breathing. "This is it," Valor said. "Once we cross, there's no turning back. Seraphine will know. She'll come." Celine stepped forward, didn't hesitate, had come too far to hesitate now. The moment her foot crossed the invisible line, the forest screamed. Not sound, feeling, magic ripping through the air like a shockwave. Every tree, every plant, every living thing connected to the witch's power responding to the intrusion. Valor grabbed her arm. His wolf was fully surfaced now, eyes gold, claws extended. "Run," he said. They ran. The forest came alive. Roots erupted from the ground trying to trip them. Branches whipped down trying to grab them. The moss expanded and contracted, making the terrain shift unpredictably. Celine's lungs burned. Her legs screamed, but she kept moving because stopping meant dying, and she refused to die this close to the end. They burst into a clearing, stopped, because her brothers were there. 6 wolves, massive, fur-matted, eyes that held human intelligence trapped in animal bodies. Celine's heart stopped. Kieran was in front, the largest. Gray fur, scars across his face from 9 years of survival in hostile territory. He saw her. Recognition flashed, then fury. Behind her, more wolves emerged from the trees. But these weren't her brothers. These were Seraphine's creatures. Bound wolves. Magic-twisted things that barely remembered being human. A dozen of them. Maybe more. Valor moved in front of Celine, every inch the alpha now, protective, dominant. Her brothers circled, uncertain. They recognized her, but they didn't recognize him. Didn't understand why a strange alpha was standing between them and their sister. The bound wolves attacked. Chaos erupted. Valor shifted. The transformation was instant, brutal. 1 second he was a man. The next he was a massive black wolf with eyes like winter storms. He tore into the bound wolves with surgical precision. Throat rips. Spine breaks. He fought like someone who'd been doing this his entire life. Celine's brothers joined the fight, not because they trusted Valor, because the bound wolves were enemies and pack protected pack, even when the pack was broken and cursed. Celine pressed herself against a tree. Useless. Unable to fight. Unable to shift. Unable to do anything but watch and pray everyone she loved survived. The battle was vicious. Fast. The bound wolves were strong but mindless. Her brothers were smart but weakened by years of the curse. Valor was the tipping point. Pure alpha dominance backed by decades of combat experience. Within minutes, the bound wolves were dead or fleeing. Valor shifted back to human, blood on his mouth, breathing hard, but alive. Her brothers stayed wolf, watched him, wary, aggressive. Kieran growled, low, warning. Valor met his gaze. Didn't back down, equal predators sizing each other up. "I'm not your enemy," Valor said. His voice carried alpha authority. "Your sister is my mate. I'm here to help her finish what she started." Kieran's growl deepened. "You don't trust me." "Fine. But she does. And she's been bleeding for you for 9 years, so you're going to stand down and let her do what she came here to do." The standoff held. Then Kieran stepped back, submission, reluctant, but real. The other brothers followed his lead. Celine let out the breath she'd been holding. Valor turned to her. "Where are the nettles?" She pointed deeper into the forest, toward the heart of the cursed wood where the most potent magic grew. Of course they were there. The witch would never make it easy. "Let's move," Valor said, "before she sends something worse." They walked. 7 wolves and 2 humans. An army that looked nothing like an army. The nettles grew in a clearing that felt wrong. The air was thick, oppressive. The plants themselves seemed to writhe. Celine approached, reached out, touched the first stem. Pain exploded up her arm, white hot, like touching molten metal. She gasped, pulled back. Valor was there immediately. "What happened?" She showed him her hand. The skin was burned, blistered, from a single touch. "These are the nettles? They hurt you?" She nodded. "How are you supposed to harvest them?" She pointed to her hand, then shrugged. This was how. 9 years of burning herself, destroying her hands piece by piece, There was no other way. Valor's expression went dark. You've been doing this for 9 years? Burning yourself every night? Another nod. He looked at the nettles, at her destroyed hands, at the 2 unfinished shirts that still needed God knew how much material. No, he said. She stared at him. You're not doing this alone. Show me how to harvest them. She shook her head violently. The pain was hers. The sacrifice was hers. She wouldn't let him. He grabbed her shoulders, gentle but firm. Celine, you're one person. You need pounds of nettles to finish 2 shirts. At the rate you're going, it'll take weeks. We don't have weeks. She knew. She'd always known the math didn't work. But she'd hoped, desperately hoped she could make it work anyway. So let me help, Valor said. Let your brothers help. We spread the pain. Finish faster. Break the curse before Seraphine arrives. Her brothers shifted closer, listening, understanding. Kieran made a sound, agreement. The others echoed it. Celine wanted to argue, wanted to keep the burden herself because it was hers, and she'd carried it this far. But the truth was simple. She couldn't finish alone. Not fast enough. Not anymore. She nodded. Valor smiled, grim, determined. Show me how. She demonstrated. Grabbed a nettle, bare-handed, ignored the pain, snapped the stem, held it while the burning spread. He watched, learned. Then he grabbed his own nettle, his jaw locked, muscles rigid, but he held on, harvested the stem, dropped it in a pile. Her brothers shifted to human, naked, scarred, feral looking from years of living as beasts. But they were her brothers, and they reached for nettles without hesitation. They worked in silence, building a pile of stems that would become thread, that would become shirts, that would break a curse 9 years old. It took hours. The sun set. The moon rose. They kept harvesting. Celine's hands went numb, then beyond numb. Just distant pain that existed somewhere outside her body. Around her, the others fared the same. Valor's hands were blistered and bleeding. Her brothers were shaking, but no one stopped. They worked until they had enough. Maybe. Hopefully. Then they collapsed. Celine counted heads. 7 brothers, including Kieran, 1 king, 1 sister, 9 people who just deliberately destroyed their hands for a chance at freedom. She wanted to weep, from gratitude, from exhaustion, from the sheer weight of watching people suffer for her. But crying was a luxury she couldn't afford. So she pulled out the 2 unfinished shirts, started working, fingers clumsy, vision blurred. Her brothers watched, silent. They couldn't help with this part. Only she could weave the shirts. Only her hands could channel the magic. Valor sat beside her, not helping, just present, solid warmth in the cold night. Hours passed. She finished one sleeve, started the next. Dawn was coming. She could feel it, the darkness thinning at the edges. She was halfway through the second sleeve when the forest went quiet. Completely quiet. No wind, no animals, no sound at all. Everyone froze. Then Seraphine's voice echoed through the trees, amused, delighted. You really thought you could break my curse in my own territory? How adorable. She stepped into the clearing, and she wasn't alone. Behind her stood half the palace guard, nobles, generals, people Valor had trusted, people who'd sworn loyalty, all of them staring at their king with expressions ranging from fear to greed. Valor stood slowly, understanding hitting like a physical blow. These were his people, his army. And they'd chosen the witch. The witch smiled. Did you really think loyalty meant anything, King Valor? Loyalty is just a word people use until someone offers more gold, more power, more safety. She gestured to the crowd behind her. I offered them a kingdom without a tyrant, without a king who'd throw away an empire for one girl. They accepted. Valor's face went blank, the expression of someone watching everything he'd built crumble. You're not a king anymore, Seraphine said. You're a fugitive, a traitor, a man who abandoned his throne for a woman who can't even speak. She turned to Celine. And you, 9 years of running, 9 years of suffering. For what? So you could watch me kill them anyway? Celine's hands were shaking, the unfinished shirt falling from her grip. Seraphine laughed. Did you really think I'd let you finish? Did you think I'd just stand by while you undid my masterpiece? She raised her hand, magic crackling. I gave you 9 years of hope. let you bleed and sacrifice and believe you could win, because that made this moment so much sweeter. The magic built, dark, overwhelming. Now you'll watch your brothers die. Then you'll watch your mate die. Then you'll die knowing you failed everyone you loved. She released the spell. Everything went black. The darkness wasn't empty. It was alive. Thick. Sentient. Magic that had weight and texture and intention. It wrapped around Celine's throat like hands, squeezed, cut off air, cut off light, cut off everything except the absolute certainty that she was about to die. Then the darkness shattered. Not slowly, not gradually. It exploded outward in a shockwave that threw Seraphine back 10 feet and dropped half her army to their knees. Valor stood at the center of the clearing, but he wasn't just Valor anymore. His wolf had taken control. Not a shift. Something else. Something deeper. The beast and the man merged into a single entity that radiated power so raw it made the air shimmer. His eyes were pure gold. His body was still human but moving with predatory grace that belonged to something else entirely. When he spoke, it was his voice and his wolf's voice layered together. "You made a mistake, witch." Seraphine pushed herself upright. For the first time since Celine had known her, the witch looked uncertain. "What are you?" she whispered. "The thing you should have killed 9 years ago when you had the chance." He moved, fast, impossibly fast. 1 second he was standing still, the next he was in front of Seraphine with his hand around her throat. She screamed, magic exploded from her body. Black fire, curse, energy. The kind of power that should have turned him to ash. It didn't. Valor's merged form burned through the magic like it wasn't there. His grip tightened. "You think you're the only one who can sacrifice?" he said. His voice was cold. Dead. The voice of someone who'd already accepted what came next. "I've been Alpha for 9 years. 9 years of holding an empire together through sheer force. You know what that costs?" He squeezed harder. Seraphine's eyes bulged. "Everything. It costs everything. Your humanity, your compassion, your ability to care about anything except survival. I stopped being human the day I took that throne." Behind him, the traitor army was recovering, weapons drawn, moving forward. Valor didn't look at them, but Celine's brothers did. They shifted. All 6. Massive wolves with human rage burning in their eyes. They'd spent 9 years as beasts, 9 years learning to hunt, to kill, to survive in hostile territory that wanted them dead. They launched at the army. Chaos erupted for the second time in 3 days. Kieran went straight for the throat of the nearest general, ripped it out before the man could scream. Darian and Rowan worked as a pair, flanking and tearing. Caspian was pure aggression, all teeth and claws and fury. Theron fought with surgical precision, targeting joints and tendons. Finn, the youngest, moved like smoke, appearing and disappearing between soldiers. They were outnumbered 5-1. They were winning, because numbers meant nothing when you were fighting people who'd forgotten how to be civilized. Celine's brothers had spent 9 years as wolves. They'd learned lessons that soldiers never touched. How to kill efficiently, how to ignore pain, how to keep moving when your body screamed to stop. The army broke, started running, scattering into the forest. Kieran let them go, turned back to the clearing, to his sister. Celine was frozen, watching Valor hold Seraphine by the throat while the witch struggled and failed to break free. "You're going to die now," Valor said. "Not because you're evil, not because you're a threat, because you touched what's mine." Seraphine laughed, blood on her teeth. "You can't kill me. I'm bound to the forest, to the magic. Kill me, and the curse becomes permanent. Your mate's brothers stay wolves forever." Valor's expression didn't change. "I know." Celine's heart stopped. He knew. He'd known the whole time. Killing the witch meant trapping her brothers. And he was going to do it anyway, because that was the calculation alphas made. Sacrifice the few to protect the one that mattered most. Cold, brutal. The kind of decision that separated leaders from followers. Celine screamed. No sound came out, but her throat tore with the effort. She tried to move, tried to reach him. Kieran blocked her. Wolf body between her and Valor, understanding what was happening and refusing to let her stop it. Because Kieran had made the same calculation. His brothers had made it too, 6 lives versus 1 mate bond. The math was ugly but clear. They'd spent 9 years as wolves. They could spend forever that way if it meant their sister survived. Valor's hand tightened. Seraphine's magic flared one last time. Desperate, she threw everything she had at him. The clearing exploded with black fire. When the smoke cleared, Valor was still standing, still holding her, but his body was burned, skin blistered, blood running. He didn't let go. "Worth it," he said. Then he snapped her neck. The sound echoed through the forest like a gunshot. Seraphine's body went limp. Her magic collapsed, unraveled. The forest screamed, and the curse solidified. Celine felt it happen, felt the magic lock into place. Permanent now. Unbreakable. Her brothers would be wolves until they died. 9 years of sacrifice. 9 years of bleeding and silence and hope. Gone in 1 second because a king loved her more than an empire. She collapsed. Not from injury. From the weight of it. The absolute crushing weight of watching everything she'd worked for dissolve because someone chose her over logic. Valor dropped Seraphine's corpse, walked to Celine, knelt in front of her. His merged form was fading, the gold draining from his eyes, the wolf retreating, leaving just a man, burned, bleeding, exhausted. "I'm sorry," he said. She stared at him. Couldn't process. Couldn't understand why he was apologizing for destroying her entire purpose. He touched her face, gentle despite the burns on his hands. "But I'm not sorry enough to regret it. I'd do it again, every time, because you're alive. And that matters more than anything else." Behind him, her brothers shifted to human, stayed human, because the curse had changed. It wasn't broken, but killing the witch had altered it. They could shift now, could choose. Human or wolf. But they'd never be fully human again. The beast was permanent, woven into their souls, a compromise the curse had made in death. Kieran walked over. Naked, scarred, looking at his sister with eyes that held too much understanding. "He's right," Kieran said. His voice was rough, unused. 9 years of silence. We'd spend eternity as wolves if it meant you lived. The other brothers nodded. Agreement. Unity. Celine wanted to scream at them, wanted to rage, wanted to make them understand that she'd destroyed her voice and her hands and 9 years of her life specifically so they wouldn't have to make that choice. But the words wouldn't come. They never came. And maybe that was the cruelest part. She'd spent 9 years silent to save them. And now that silence meant she couldn't even tell them how wrong they were. Valor stood, swayed, his injuries catching up. Kieran caught him, steadied him. For a moment, the two alphas looked at each other, king and heir, rivals who'd never met before tonight. Then Kieran nodded. Once. "Respect." "You chose right," Kieran said. "I know," Valor replied. Celine watched them. Watched these two dominant predators agree that her life was worth more than freedom, worth more than curses, worth more than logic. She should have felt grateful, honored, loved. Instead, she felt hollow. Because now what? The curse wasn't broken. Her brothers were half-wolf forever. Valor had lost his empire. Seraphine was dead, but her magic still poisoned the land. 9 years of fighting, and they'd ended up here, alive, broken, incomplete. "We need to move," Theron said. His voice was steady, tactical. The brother who'd always seemed 2 steps ahead. "Seraphine's army scattered, but they'll regroup. Come back with reinforcements." "Where do we go?" Rowan asked. Valor looked at Celine, like she had the answer. She didn't. Had no idea where they went from here. The palace was gone. The north was hostile. The forest was cursed. They were fugitives with no home and no plan. East, Valor decided. Away from witch territory. Away from my former empire. We find neutral ground. Rebuild. "Rebuild what?" Caspian asked. "You're not a king anymore." "No," Valor agreed, "but I'm still an alpha, and alphas protect their pack." He looked at Celine's brothers, at the 6 wolves who'd spent 9 years cursed and were choosing to stay with their sister, even though freedom was impossible now. "Your pack now," he said. "All of you. We survived together." Kieran studied him. Testing. "Why? Why claim us? We're not your blood, not your responsibility." Because she's my mate, Valor said simply. That makes you family. And I protect family. The words hung in the air, heavy, binding. Finn, the youngest, laughed. Bitter, exhausted. So we went from noble house to cursed wolves to fugitive pack. That's one hell of a downgrade. Could be worse, Darian said. We could be dead. Give it time, Finn muttered. They gathered what little they had. The unfinished shirts, the harvested nettles. Weapons scavenged from fallen soldiers. Celine watched them prepare to leave. Watched her brothers move with new confidence, despite the permanent beast under their skin. Watched Valor give orders with the same authority he'd used as king, even though the crown was gone. These were her people now, her pack, built from ruins and sacrifice and choices no one should have had to make. They started walking, east, away from everything they'd known. The forest thinned, the cursed feeling faded. Normal trees replaced twisted ones, the air lightened. They walked for hours. No one spoke, too exhausted, too raw. As dawn broke, they reached a river, clear water, neutral territory. Valor stopped. This is far enough for now. We camp, rest, figure out what comes next. They collapsed on the riverbank, 7 brothers, 1 king, 1 silent girl. A pack that shouldn't exist but did anyway. Celine sat apart from the others, staring at the water, watching light break across the surface. She'd failed. Spent 9 years working toward one goal and failed at the last second. Her brothers were still cursed. Her voice was still gone. Everything she'd sacrificed had bought nothing except survival. And somehow that was supposed to be enough. Valor sat beside her, close enough for warmth, not touching. "You're angry," he said. She nodded. "At me?" Another nod. "Good. You should be. I destroyed your plan, killed your chance at breaking the curse, made the choice for you instead of letting you make it." She looked at him, found exhaustion in his face, pain, but no regret. "I won't apologize for keeping you alive," he said, "even if you hate me for it." She didn't hate him. That was the problem. She should hate him, should rage at him for throwing away 9 years of work, for choosing her over logic. But she couldn't, because somewhere in the past week, between running and fighting and bleeding together, she'd stopped being alone. And maybe that was worth more than she'd thought. Her wolf stirred, pressing against her skin, wanting to complete the bond that had been building since the first night he'd walked into the kitchen. "Not yet," her human side whispered. "Too soon, too raw. But soon." Because now that they'd survived the impossible, now that they'd lost everything and rebuilt from nothing, the bond felt inevitable, necessary. The final piece of a pack that had been forming in the spaces between sacrifice and survival. Across the river, something moved. Everyone tensed, hands going to weapons. A figure stepped out of the trees. Female, tall, silver hair, eyes that looked ancient. She walked to the river's edge, stopped, looked directly at Celine. When she spoke, her voice carried across the water like it was nothing. "You broke the curse," she said. Celine's brothers stiffened. Valor moved in front of her. The woman smiled. "Not unkindly. Not the way you wanted to, but you broke it. Seraphine Noctis is dead. Her magic is unraveling. In 9 days, the residual curse will fade. Your brothers will be fully human again." Silence. Absolute silence. "Who are you?" Valor demanded. "Someone who's been watching this play out for 9 years. Waiting to see if you'd choose right." "Choose right?" Kieran's voice was dangerous. "People died. We're cursed. Nothing about this was right." The woman's expression didn't change. "You survived. That's what matters. Seraphine built a curse designed to break you through hope, made you think you could win through silence and sacrifice. But the real curse wasn't the wolves. It was the isolation. The belief that one person had to carry everything alone." She looked at Celine. "You broke that curse the day you let them help. The day you stopped trying to save everyone by yourself. That's when Seraphine's magic started to crack." Celine's throat closed. Not from curse, from the crushing weight of understanding. 9 years, 9 years of silence. And the solution had been the opposite. Community, pack, sharing the burden instead of hoarding it. The woman turned to leave. "Wait," Valor said. "What are you?" "Just someone who remembers what real magic looks like. The kind that comes from choice instead of force." She glanced back. 9 days. Then you're free. All of you. She disappeared into the trees. The pack sat in stunned silence. Then Finn started laughing. High. Slightly hysterical. So we went through all that pain and sacrifice and running, and we just needed to wait 9 more days? Kieran hit him, hard enough to knock sense back in. We didn't know, Kieran said. Couldn't have known. We did what we thought was right. And we're alive, Darian added. That counts for something. It counts for everything, Valor said. He looked at each of them. At the pack he'd accidentally built. You're alive. She's alive. In 9 days you're free. That's not failure. That's victory we bled for. Celine closed her eyes, felt tears threatening for the first time in 9 years. She'd spent so long being strong, being silent, being the one who carried everything. Maybe it was time to let someone else carry her for a while. Valor's hand found hers, squeezed gently. 9 days, he said. We can survive 9 more days. She nodded. Around them, her brothers were already planning, already discussing what came after freedom, where they'd go, what they'd build. The conversation washed over her. Familiar voices, family voices, the sound of people who'd survived the impossible and were choosing to keep surviving anyway. That was the real lesson, she realized. Not silence, not sacrifice, not carrying burdens alone. Just the stubborn, bloody-minded refusal to let the darkness win. Valor pulled her closer. She let him. For the first time in 9 years, Celine Vale wasn't alone. And when the sun rose fully over the river, painting everything gold and clean and new, she felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. Not the desperate hope that had driven her for 9 years. The kind that demanded sacrifice and blood and silence. Real hope. The kind that came from having people beside you. Pack. Family. Mate. The kind that whispered maybe, just maybe, they'd all make it through this intact. 9 days until freedom. They could survive 9 days. They'd already survived worse. 9 days felt like 9 years. They camped by the river because moving felt pointless when freedom was coming whether they ran or stayed. The pack fell into rhythms that felt older than memory. Kieran hunted. Darian and Rowan built shelter. Caspian stood watch. Theron planned what came after. Finn kept everyone from drowning in the weight of waiting. And Valor held everything together through sheer force of will, even though his body was still healing from burns that should have killed him. Celine watched them, silent as always, but the silence felt different now. Not imposed by curse, just the natural quiet of someone who'd learned that words weren't always necessary. She sat by the water most days, hands in her lap, the destroyed fingers slowly healing now that she wasn't shredding them on silverbane nettles every night. The skin would never be smooth again. Too much scar tissue, too many years of deliberate damage. But they worked. They held things. That was enough. Valor found her there on the 3rd morning, sat beside her without asking permission. They'd barely spoken since the clearing. Too much had happened, too many decisions made that couldn't be unmade. The air between them was thick with unfinished conversations and a mate bond that kept pulling tighter. You're going to have to talk to me eventually, he said. She looked at him, raised an eyebrow. He smiled. Tired. Or at least acknowledged that I exist. She pointed at him, then at herself, then made a gesture that clearly meant they were sitting together, so obviously she acknowledged his existence. The smile widened. You're a pain. She shrugged. Guilty. The silence stretched. Comfortable now. Two predators who'd learned each other's rhythms through blood and violence and the kind of trust that only came from surviving impossible things together. I've been thinking, Valor said eventually, about what comes after. Celine tilted her head, listening. The Empire is gone. My throne. My authority. Everything I built for 9 years. He stared at the water. I should feel destroyed, should be raging at the loss. But he wasn't. She could see it in his face, the unexpected peace. But I don't, he continued, because for the first time since my father died, I'm not alone. I'm not carrying everything by myself. He looked at her. You understand that. You carried your brother's curse alone for 9 years, never asked for help, never expected anyone to share the weight. She nodded. And it nearly killed you. Another nod. His hand found hers, careful of the healing burns. That's the real curse. he said quietly. Not the magic, not the witch, just the belief that strength means suffering alone, that asking for help is weakness, that love is something you sacrifice instead of something that saves you. Celine's throat closed, because he'd just articulated the lesson she'd spent 9 years learning the hard way. I was a terrible king, Valor said. Strong, feared, undefeated, but terrible at actually leading. Because I didn't trust anyone, didn't let anyone close, just held power through violence and expected that to be enough. It kept you alive, Celine thought. It kept me alive, he agreed. Like he'd hurt her. But it didn't make me human, didn't give me anything worth protecting, just territory and fear. What changed? You, he said simply. You walked into my palace and reminded me that survival isn't the same as living, that strength without connection is just violence waiting to implode. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she hadn't reminded him of anything, that she'd been too busy drowning in her own curse to save anyone else. But maybe that was the point. Maybe they'd saved each other by accident, by being broken enough to recognize brokenness, by being desperate enough to accept help instead of demanding it. The mate bond pulled. Insistent now. She could feel it. The final thread waiting to snap into place, one choice away from permanent, from binding. Not yet, her human side whispered, but soon. Valor felt it too. She could see the awareness in his eyes, the wolf pressing close to his skin. When you're ready, he said. No pressure, no demands. Just when you're ready. She nodded. He stood, walked back to camp, left her alone with the water and the morning and the strange new feeling of hope that didn't demand sacrifice. Pasek. On the 5th day, Kieran approached her. She was working on one of the unfinished shirts, not because the curse needed them anymore, because 9 years of weaving had made her hands restless without needle and thread. He sat across from her, waited until she looked up. Her eldest brother, the one who should have inherited their father's house, who'd spent 9 years trapped as a wolf, watching his little sister bleed for him. The anger in his eyes was gone now, replaced by something harder to name. Grief, maybe, or acceptance. I hated you for 3 years, he said. Celine's hand stilled. When father died and the curse hit, I understood why you took it, understood the logic. 6 brothers for 1 sister. The math made sense. He looked at his own hands, scarred from 9 years of hunting and killing and surviving. But then 3 years in, when I realized how long 9 years actually was, I started hating you. His voice was steady, matter of fact. Not angry, just honest. Because you chose for all of us. Decided our lives were worth more than yours without asking if we agreed. That's not sacrifice. That's arrogance. Celine's chest tightened. Because he was right. She'd made the choice alone. Assumed her brothers would want to be saved. Never considered that maybe they'd rather die than watch her destroy herself. But I stopped hating you 2 years ago, Kieran continued. You know why? She shook her head. Because I watched you keep going. Watched you work yourself to death every single night. Never quit. Never complained. Just bled and kept bleeding because you loved us more than you loved yourself. He met her eyes. That's not arrogance. That's the most selfless thing I've ever seen. Tears threatened. Celine forced them down. And I realized something, Kieran said. You didn't choose for us. You chose for yourself. Because you couldn't survive watching us die. So you found the only path that kept everyone alive, and you walked it even though it destroyed you. He reached across, took the shirt from her hands, set it aside. I'm not angry anymore. None of us are. But you need to understand something. You don't owe us anything else. You paid the price, more than paid it, so whatever comes next you choose for yourself. Not for us, not for him. He gestured toward where Valor stood talking with Theron. For you. Celine's throat worked. No sound came out. Would never come out. The curse might fade, but her voice was gone forever. That was the price that didn't refund. But she nodded. Understanding. Accepting. Kieran smiled. Rare. Real. Good. Now finish that shirt so your hands stop shaking. You're making me nervous. He left. Celine picked up the needle, found her rhythm again. But something had shifted. Some weight she'd been carrying lifted. Her brothers didn't need saving anymore. They needed family. Pack. The simple comfort of being together without sacrifice hanging over everything. She could do that, had been doing that, just needed to stop treating it like debt and start treating it like choice. The needle moved, the thread pulled, the shirt grew, not for curse breaking, just for the simple act of creation, of making something whole from broken pieces. The 8th day brought rain, cold, miserable, the kind that soaked through everything and made even the best shelter feel inadequate. The pack huddled together, body heat shared, territory defended against weather that didn't care about dominance or power. Celine sat between Valor and Finn, the youngest brother and the displaced king, two people who shouldn't fit together but did anyway. Finn was talking, always talking. 9 years of silence had made him appreciate sound. So when the curse breaks tomorrow, first thing I'm doing is eating real food, not raw rabbit, not foraged berries, actual bread. With butter. Maybe cheese, definitely wine. You'll get drunk and pass out, Darian said from across the fire. That's the plan. Valor laughed, low, rusty, like he'd forgotten how and was relearning. Celine felt the sound vibrate through her, felt the mate bond pull tighter in response. Tomorrow. Tomorrow the curse faded. Tomorrow her brothers were free. Tomorrow she could stop waiting and start living. The thought was terrifying. She'd spent 9 years with a single purpose, single focus, break the curse, save her brothers, survive. What did you do when the purpose was accomplished? When survival became life instead of just existence? Valor's hand found hers under the shared blanket, squeezed gently, like he knew. Like he understood that freedom was sometimes harder than captivity because it demanded choice instead of obedience to circumstance. We'll figure it out, he murmured, too quiet for the others to hear. Whatever comes next, we'll figure it out together. Together. The word felt foreign, unfamiliar. She'd been alone for so long that Pack felt like a concept instead of reality. But Valor's hand was solid, warm, real. And around the fire, her brothers were arguing about food and wine and plans that extended past tomorrow, past freedom, into a future that actually existed. Maybe together wasn't so foreign after all. Maybe it was just unfamiliar enough to be worth learning. Checked. The 9th day dawned clear. Celine woke before sunrise. Couldn't sleep, couldn't stay still. This was it. The day the curse faded. The day 9 years of sacrifice paid off. She should have felt triumphant, victorious. Instead, she felt hollow. Because the curse had given her purpose, had defined every choice, every action, every moment of silence. Without it, she was just a girl with destroyed hands and no voice, and a pack she didn't know how to belong to yet. She walked to the river, sat at the edge, watched dawn break across water that looked like molten gold. Behind her, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. Valor sat beside her, silent, just present. They waited. The sun rose fully, light spilling across the forest, warming skin, burning away shadows. And then Celine felt it. The curse breaking. Not slowly, not gradually. All at once, like chains she'd worn for 9 years suddenly dissolving. Her throat opened. The magical seal that had kept her silent cracked and fell away. She could speak. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Not because of magic, because her vocal cords had atrophied. 9 years of disuse had destroyed them as thoroughly as the curse ever could. The irony hit like a physical blow. She'd sacrificed her voice to break the curse, and breaking the curse didn't return what she'd sacrificed. Valor's arm came around her shoulders, solid, grounding. I know, he said quietly. She leaned into him. Let the grief come. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet tears for the girl she used to be. The voice she'd never get back. The price that stayed paid. Behind them, her brothers were celebrating, shifting back and forth, testing their freedom, laughing and shouting and being human for the first time in 9 years. They were free, completely free. The curse was gone. Celine had won, but victory tasted like ash. Valor held her while she cried. Didn't try to fix it, didn't offer empty comfort, just held her and let her feel the weight of everything she'd lost. When the tears finally stopped, he pulled back, looked at her. You gave everything, he said. Your voice, your hands, 9 years of your life. That kind of sacrifice changes you, carves out pieces you don't get back. She nodded. But you're still here, still alive, still breathing. He touched her face, gentle. That's not nothing. It felt like nothing. Felt like she'd traded everything for a freedom that didn't include her. You're wrong, Valor said, like he could read her thoughts. You didn't trade everything. You transformed it. Your voice became action. Your pain became purpose. Your silence became the loudest thing in my empire. She wanted to believe him, wanted to accept that the sacrifice meant something beyond just survival. But the hollow feeling remained. Kieran approached. His face was different, human, fully human, no trace of wolf except the eyes. Those would always carry the beast. He knelt in front of Celine, took her hands, the destroyed ones that had woven shirts and harvested nettles and bled for 9 years. Thank you, he said simply. The other brothers gathered, formed a circle. Pack. Darian spoke next. You gave us life. We won't waste it. Rowan nodded. Whatever you need. Whatever you want. We're here. Caspian's voice was rough. You're our sister, our alpha. We follow you. Theron smiled, slight. You taught us that strength isn't about power. It's about endurance. We'll remember. Finn, youngest and most honest, just hugged her, tight enough to hurt. Thank you for not giving up on us. Celine felt the hollow feeling crack, not disappear, but crack enough to let something else in. Love, family, Pack, the thing she'd fought for, the reason sacrifice had been worth making. She pulled back, looked at each of them, her brothers. Free, human, alive, and realized that the price had been worth it. Not because she got her voice back, she hadn't. Not because the sacrifice was fair, it wasn't. But because they were here, all of them, together, alive. That was enough. Had to be enough. Valor stood, pulled her up with him. Come on, he said. We have something to settle. She looked at him, questioning. The mate bond. It's been waiting 9 days. I'm done waiting. Her heart kicked, hard. The brothers stepped back, giving space, giving privacy. Valor walked her away from camp, into the forest, to a clearing that felt ancient, sacred. He turned, faced her, winter gray eyes holding hers. I love you, he said. Not because you're perfect, not because you gave everything for your family, because you're the first person who looked at me and saw something other than power. You saw a man, tired, alone, drowning, and you didn't try to save me. You just existed beside me and reminded me that drowning isn't the only option. Celine's chest tightened, because he'd just articulated something she'd felt but never named. I don't have an empire anymore, Valor continued. Don't have a throne or an army or anything except these burns and a pack I accidentally collected. He smiled, bitter. Most people would call that failure, but it wasn't. She could see it in his face. The peace, the contentment. I call it freedom, he said. For the first time in 9 years, I'm not carrying an empire. Just you, just us. And that feels like winning. He took her hand, placed it over his heart. Complete the bond with me. Choose this. Choose us. Not because you owe me, not because you're grateful, because you want to. That was the question. Did she want this? Want him? Want a mate bond that would tie her to another person's life when she'd just spent 9 years fighting for independence? The answer should have been complicated, should have required thought and consideration and careful weighing of options. But it wasn't. She knew, had known since he stood between her and Seraphine, since he threw away an empire, since he held her while she cried. She wanted this, wanted him, wanted the pack and the future and the terrifying, beautiful mess of building something new from ruins. She nodded, clear, certain. Valor's wolf surged, gold flooding his eyes, the beast recognizing acceptance, recognizing mate. He kissed her, and the bond snapped into place, complete, permanent, unbreakable. Magic flooded through her, not curse magic, not witch magic, pure bond magic, the kind that came from choice instead of force. It felt like fire, like ice, like every contradiction in the universe resolving into single certainty. Mine, Valor's wolf growled. Mine, her wolf agreed. When they pulled apart, both of them were shaking, changed on a fundamental level. No longer two separate beings, pack, mates, bonded. Valor's forehead pressed against hers, breathing hard. "Worth it?" she asked with her eyes. "Worth everything." They returned to camp hand in hand, the bond visible now, shimmering in the air between them. Pack recognized it immediately. Kieran nodded approval. "About time." Finn grinned. "Does this mean we're stuck with him?" "Permanently," Darian said. "Could be worse," Rowan added. "He did throw away an empire for her." "That's either incredibly romantic or incredibly stupid," Theron mused. "Both," Velar said. "Definitely both." The pack laughed. Real laughter. The kind that came from relief and joy and the simple fact of being alive after everything. They spent the rest of the day planning. Where to go? What to build? How to survive as a pack of fugitives with no home and no resources. "East," Kieran suggested. "Away from witch territory and empire politics. Find neutral ground and build something small, something ours." Velor nodded. "I know a place. Northern mountains. Unclaimed territory. Harsh, but defensible." "Sounds perfect," Caspian said. The plan formed. Simple. Practical. They'd travel east, find the northern mountains, build a settlement, live as pack instead of nobles or kings or anything that required bowing to someone else's authority. It wasn't the life Celine had imagined 9 years ago, wasn't the life any of them had expected, but it was theirs, built from choice instead of circumstance, from pack instead of power. As the sun set on the 9th day, Celine sat with her pack around the fire, Valor beside her, brothers surrounding her, bond humming contentedly. She still couldn't speak. That loss was permanent, but she'd learned over 9 years that words weren't the only language. She existed, present, alive, free. And in the spaces between silence, she found something better than voice. She found belonging. Finn started telling stories, wild exaggerations about their childhood before the curse, making everyone laugh. Darian and Rowan argued about the best route east, good-natured bickering that meant family. Kieran sat apart, silent, keeping watch, doing what eldest brothers did. Caspian and Theron discussed weapons and defense, already planning how to protect what they'd built. Valor's hand found Celine's, squeezed gently. She squeezed back. No words needed, just the simple acknowledgement that they'd made it, survived, won. Not the way they'd planned, not the way anyone would have chosen, but they'd won anyway. That night, Celine dreamed of voices, her father's, her mother's long gone, the girl she used to be before silence became survival. In the dream, her father looked at her with pride. "You did well, little shadow." "I lost my voice," she tried to say. He smiled. "You found something better. You found your roar." She woke before dawn, Valor still sleeping beside her, pack surrounding them, protection and warmth and the simple safety of not being alone. She understood now. The curse hadn't just been about silence, it had been about isolation, about believing strength meant carrying everything alone. Breaking it hadn't required magic, just the willingness to accept help, to share weight, to choose pack over pride. That was the real lesson. The one worth 9 years of blood and sacrifice. Power couldn't be held alone. Love couldn't be earned through suffering. Strength came from connection, not domination. She'd learned it the hard way, through pain and silence and the destruction of everything she'd been. But she'd learned it. And now, in the quiet morning, with her pack sleeping around her and her mate breathing beside her and freedom finally real instead of imagined, Celine Vale understood what victory actually looked like. It looked like this. Simple, scarred, imperfect, but alive. Together. Unbroken. She touched Valor's face, gentle. He stirred, eyes opening, gold fading to gray. "Morning already?" His voice was rough with sleep. She nodded, smiled. He pulled her closer, kissed her forehead. "Stay. Just a little longer." She did, because she could. Because no curse demanded she work. No sacrifice required her pain. No obligation forced her forward. She could just exist, present, alive, loved. Around them, the pack stirred, morning coming, day starting. But for just this moment, Celine let herself be still. Let herself feel the weight of 9 years lifting. Let herself breathe without counting the cost. This was freedom, not the dramatic kind, not the triumphant kind, just the simple freedom of being human, of being loved, of being enough exactly as she was. Destroyed voice, scarred hands, 9 years of sacrifice, and still enough, always enough. Valor's arms tightened around her. Mine, his wolf whispered. Yours, hers agreed. The sun rose, light spilling across the forest, burning away the last shadows. And Celine Vale, silent sister, lost princess, broken savior, finally understood what her father had meant all those years ago. Strength wasn't about power, it was about endurance, about surviving the impossible and choosing to keep living anyway. She'd endured. She'd survived. She'd won. Not because she was special, not because she was chosen, just because she refused to quit, refused to let darkness win, refused to accept that sacrifice had to mean loss. She'd transformed sacrifice into strength, silence into presence, loss into love. And in doing so, she'd become exactly what her pack needed, what she needed. Not a savior, not a martyr, not a victim, just Celine, scarred, silent, unbreakable. That was enough, would always be enough. The pack rose, started moving, started living, and Celine rose with them, hand in hand with her mate, surrounded by her brothers, protected by pack, walking toward a future that demanded nothing except the simple courage to keep breathing. She could do that, had done that for 9 years, could do it for 9 more, for 90, for forever. One breath at a time, one day at a time, one choice at a time. That was victory. That was freedom. That was life. And it was more than enough. It was everything.